Hi, my name is Jay Oza. I coach people win with their speeches. I hope the videos that I'm recording are helping you, and if you ever have to give a high stakes speech, let me know. I want to share some things that I've discovered talking to people who have given a speech, a high stakes speech or a high opportunity speech, the first one of its kind, like the first time they spoke about this topic. And this is kind of advanced because a lot of times we focus on the development of the speech and kind of getting a rough idea of the audience, what your objective is, and that, by the way, takes up quite a bit of time. The part that is often ignored is what are you likely to encounter when you are actually giving speech. And you do need to spend, I think, at least a week on this, which is people saying like, but I'm just happy to get my speech done. Believe me, it will make a big difference. That's why I believe that if you have a high stakes or a high opportunity speech to give, you need a 6 weeks lead time. Without that, you're just kind of flying blind. You're gonna get hit with things that you just have not expected. So let me just give you 4 things that most people who, unless you're a professional speaker, and even professional speakers often miss this: the audience, the time, the venue, and entertainment versus content. These are the choices you have to make when you're giving a speech, knowing the audience. The time means the time that they have given you to deliver your speech, and the time of the day. The venue is where exactly are you giving the speech, and what else is going on at this venue, at this location where you're giving a speech. And the last thing is, what kind of choice do you make whether you make your speech entertaining, heavy content? Like, there's a spectrum. Entertaining means people are just coming to see you for the entertainment value, and content on the right would be they're just coming for that one specific thing that they're hoping to get out of your talk. So one is very specific that only very few people out there are going to come because they already know a lot about that topic, so you don't have to give them generalities. It's got to be specific. Okay, so you now have to make a choice. What do you do? And you got to really think about this and prepare for this. Otherwise, it'll be too late. When you have to give a speech and you don't know, you're just completely going to mess it up. And it has nothing to do with how good a speaker you are. These are things that are outside your control. And you have to kind of act like you know what to do when things like this happen. Okay, so let's start with the first one, the audience. Okay, audience is very tricky, as you know. That's the reason why you're giving a speech. You don't know the audience. No matter how much you think you know the audience, you simply don't know. There's so much you don't know about the audience. Unless you're giving one-on-one talk to your wife, perhaps, maybe then you know what she wants. But audience is very tricky. So you have to probably learn this from experience, but there are certain things you can do. The one thing is you have to ask yourself, what is the average audience really look like? Why are they coming to listen to you? And this is a common mistake that many speakers make, including myself. We want to just give them the things that we know, and that's the worst thing you ever want to do. That's not the purpose. If you don't know the audience, your purpose is to give them enough to come back to you or some resource that you've identified. That is what you want the audience to do. It's like if you're advertising and nobody looks at it, that advertising for that person doesn't do anything. But if that advertising captures the person's attention, then obviously he's going to click on the website, or maybe contact you or come to your store. the advertisement doesn't just say, boom, you just get everything. So everything is incremental. And a speech, when you don't know the audience, has to kind of view it that way, that you're going to give them enough what's important, and if there is any interest, where to get more information, perhaps even go to your website or even talk to you or whatever. The purpose of giving a speech is not for them to say, yes, I like it, I'm going for it. It's for them to get enough information to move to the next step. So it's always the next step. They're not going to take 10 steps after listening to you. That's impractical, and if you try to do that, then you've narrowed your target audience so small that the feedback you'll get is that the speech was too detailed. Now there is one trap you fall into, and this is a trap that recently I was talking to my dad, who's a CPA, and he has to give a talk on Roth IRA. And I said to Dad, do not go into the details, because what will happen is a lot of people who are going to be attending, first of all, I don't know how many people, he has to get all that information. They just want some idea of why they should care about Roth IRA. What is it that they really are looking for? And I said the main thing they're looking for is financial security. And then tell a couple of stories, but do not go into details, because then what will happen is undoubtedly there will be one or two people who really are looking at this session as a consultation session. Like, oh, I know enough, now I can get that one information, I can do it. I said, that's not the person you're targeting. And I said, what will happen is that when you get feedback back from the audience of the survey, there will be people who will say, he didn't give us too much detail. And I said, that's good news. Because when you're giving a talk not knowing the audience, you can't give the details. Details is for people who have been to your session and now they want to know the details. That's what the details are for. Not for the audience that you're talking to. It's the audience that have already listened to your speech and now have a specific question about something. So never fall into the trap like, I have to go into the details. If you don't know the audience, you do not have to go into details. That's not what that speech is about. The speech is about to get them to know enough so that they come back to you. Okay, the only time that you need to be very detailed, like I said, is if I'm doing a seminar that teaches on some specific aspect of public speaking, then I better be detailed. Okay, so the spectrum is entertaining and content. Heavy content, heavy entertainment. Now, heavy entertainment should only be used when people are expecting entertainment. So if you don't know the audience, kind of play middle of the 50-yard line or between the 40-yard lines. Okay, that's basically as far as you want to do. You don't want to become a jokester. You don't want to do one joke after another. If the audience is not expecting you to be entertaining them, then don't entertain them. That's not what they're for. But that doesn't mean that your speech cannot be somewhat entertaining and interesting. And these are some of the choices, decisions that you have to make. And that's what I'm telling you, that speaking is so complicated. These are things that people just don't even think about. Do I make it entertaining or do I make it content heavy? How do I do it? Stay in between the 40-yard line and make sure that it appeals to the wider audience and what that audience is really looking for. Okay, the other part that is also important is time. Let's say you're given 45 minutes to give your talk. Ideally, you want to end it early. You'd never want to get into a situation where at 45 minutes they just stop you because that's it. You'd never want to go over the time that's allocated, no matter what. Even if they start you late, even if you lose time, the end time is always end time minus 5. 5 minutes before the speech ends. You've got to give them 5 minutes. Because when people get that time, they're going to be happy. They somehow got out of your talk, they got the main idea, and you gave them time. Always remember, you may not be able to give them to understand what you're saying sometimes, but you can always give them time. One thing you never ever want to not do is give people the time, at least 5 minutes. Now, that means that when you're preparing for your speech, you have to make sure. So let's say if it's a 45-minute speech and you're going to give them 5 minutes, so that means 40. Means that when you're practicing, you got to make sure that your speech comes in under 35 minutes so that you're most likely going to go over, so it ends at 40. So that means that if you're going to give them 5 minutes, you're going to have to make sure that your speech comes in under 10 minutes. Okay? That's how you want to practice it. And maybe even more depending on how you speak when you're getting in front of an audience. And these are things you do have to practice. The other thing about time that's kind of interesting is if it's early in the morning, if you're the first speaker, then you want to be a little bit more I would say more to the right of the 50-yard line towards content, more content heavy. And if it's anything after eating, whether it's breakfast or lunch, you want to be a little bit more content heavy, unless it's dinner. Dinner is a total different animal. Now, anytime where you're before a lunch or before quitting time, then you want to be more towards the entertainment, because at that point people's brains are fried and they're not there to get a heavy dose of content. So you got to know this, because otherwise you could do a great job and you're going to get upset when the survey comes back saying, oh, he didn't make sense, because people are not ready for that. So you got to know how people, just look at yourself. What would you like? Would you like that heavy dose early after you eat something, or before you're ready to go to lunch? I like to get it right in the morning. I'm a morning person. And again, these are things you don't know and you have to take a guess. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk about is the venue. Now, this is something most people don't think about. When you're giving a speech and there are other speakers, as far as you're concerned, your speech isn't that important. It's absolutely unimportant. You only get that brief moment and that's it. You're going to be preparing like crazy. The amount of time you're going to get, you're going to prepare for days, weeks, months. But where you are located when you're giving a speech makes a big difference on how the audience will receive it. So let's say if there are 3 days events and you're the speaker third day. And I've had this happen when I was working at Oracle. I used to go to partner conferences, and they usually put you partners the last day. Very few people attend, and they usually put you in the morning right after they had a big event the previous night. So right away, I've had that happen when I did one time an event at NCR where they had a party the previous night where people stayed out late, and I was speaking early in the morning at 8 o'clock. Now get that. I just bombed that speech. I just couldn't do it. It was very difficult. The audience wasn't really into it, and I just couldn't wait to get that speech done. I learned a hard lesson that you got to really have a different speech for that. So you got to know that. So if that's the case, then you want to make your speech entertainment heavy. And if you're like early, then make it content heavy. But if you're coming early, content. If it's later, focus on the entertainment. And also remember, there are so many speakers that you got to figure out how do you stand out. And again, I'm just kind of giving you a brief idea. These are choices that you will have to make when you're giving a speech. Because giving a speech is not just about your content and how you are delivering the content and the message that you're trying to convey, but there are factors that also determine how the audience will receive that. And a lot of it is completely outside your control, like what the audience knows, what their objective is, what's their story. It's not really about you. And a lot of the things that's about them, you really don't know. You just have to kind of identify the 240-yard line and decide which, if you're in the middle 50-yard line, do you go more left or more right, more left or more right? And that's how you calibrate it. But that means your speech has to be flexible, and that's part of the preparation. You got to know whether you want to include a story or remove the story, whether you want to include a case study or replace that with a story, or what, vice versa, whether there is a something interesting, something humorous to add, or remove that. These are things that you got to kind of be flexible in doing, and these are decisions that often are going to be made on short notice. Maybe just before you go give a talk. So these are things that you're going to have to make these kind of hard decisions. And obviously, the more experience you get, the better position you're going to be in making these type of choices. But again, you have to think like that. So to close this out, again, this last part that I'm talking about, things that are completely outside your control, you really have to work on it. I would say like a week before your speech is actually due. You're not going to be able to change it if things suddenly change, whether the audience you find out is different, whether they put you at this slot, whether their brains are fried, who the audience is. You get a rough idea, but you want to be flexible, because the more flexible you are, then you can play to the audience, and it'll give you confidence that, hey, I'm giving them something of value to them. So your main objective is, are you adding any kind of value? Now, value is not just content value, value for the audience to be there. And that means that audience, you have to know their mood, what they're going through at the event. And a lot of these are just something you're not going to know till you're at the event. So the only thing you can do is be flexible. I hope this makes sense. There's a lot here that I can't go into in this video, but I hope to record more of these videos as I learn more from my experience and other people's experience, because these are the kind of things that people don't really talk about, and they just focus on the front end, which is work on the speech. That in itself is pretty stressful because you want to make sure your content is, but why work so hard on the front end when you're going to lose it on the back end at the event? So I just wanted to bring that up and saying that these are kind of things you have to think about right when you get notified that you have to give a speech in 6 weeks. Let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.